Now, this is 2340 hours GMT when we are broadcasting part A of the Khoodeelaar television channel under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Part A is 2340 GMT, not 2320. Going to change that 2320 to 2340, and we're including in the commentary an analysis, the latest contextual issues and topics, including the topic of the, so far as we can see, the continuing search for the missing Nicola Bully in Lancashire. And we are going to update on other issues, including the publication due in the next day, that is Wednesday, the 8th of February 2023, of another racist, anti-Muslim, specifically anti-Muslim, incitement packed as so-called report by the notorious racist and believer in neo-Nazi ideology and an ideological stalwart of the fascistic Conservative Party agenda in the UK, William Shawcross, who is a liar on the records. Shawcross became item of news himself, falsely writing allegedly anti-genocide report investigation about the Cambodian massacre, the Pol Pot. And ever since that, the racist evilness, Shawcross has sunk deeper, ever deeper, into the depth of complete and utter racism, neo-Nazi, eugenics, fascism, and hatred. So William Shawcross is probably, on the evidence of his clear, published and public statements, probably a role model followed by the racist anti-Muslim evilness and dogmas as described by the Times commentator Matthew Boris Johnson. So the report is going to be about the so-called PREVENT program, which effectively was introduced in the UK during the Blair and Gordon Brown era. And it was supposed to be about radicalization, etc. But it was an actual attempt to stigmatize absolutely innocent, absolutely overwhelming innocent majority of the Muslims in the UK. And the evidence shows that the Muslims in the UK, whom Shawcross has targeted for particularly venomous, poisonous incitement against, have been radarless, lacked direction collectively, and have been betrayed by the likes of the operations that can be identified as being based at locations like the London East London Mosque, the London Muslim Centre, because the operatives there are not only not defending the universally defensible universal rights of ordinary Muslims against the propaganda onslaught mounted via the likes of William Shawcross, but in fact, those operatives are inimical to, hostile to, obstructive against ordinary Muslims who, in the case of the East London Mosque, regularly attend the East London Mosque. Many Muslims, not all the Muslims in East London or across East of London or East London, have the capacity or the space to attend the East London Mosque in Whitechapel Road, but a large number do. But they have neither any say in what decisions are made in the name of the construct called the East London Mosque, and who supposedly represents that construct and where, because no report is published, no account is published, etc., etc. So there is a malignant set of permanent, perpetual attacks operated against the collective Muslim individuals, which has impact on the individual Muslims going out and about trying to do their business every day. So during Wednesday, one of the main items in the news in the UK, unless something else disastrously happens, will include the William Shawcross latest assault on the Muslims. And the assailants on the Muslims, as far as the official incumbents in the posts of government ministers in the UK currently, fronted by the so-called Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, will be, of course, the racist, anti-Muslim, and Donald Trump stooge, Rupert Murdoch stooge, Michael Gove. And it is not expected, and I don't expect on the evidence, that there will be any critique, let alone any criticism, of the anti-Muslim, racist, genocidist incitement package due to be circulated through the media during Wednesday, the 8th of February 2023. The Labour Party will not say anything. Starmer will not say anything. In fact, if Starmer does say anything, he will only say things that are complicit with the project of the far-right, anti-Muslim, genocidist, neo-Nazi, eugenicist. How do you pronounce eugenicist? Then let's get that one right. I'll spell it first. Eu. Okay, so this is the word, that is eugenicist. So eugenicist, EUGENICIS for sugar, T for Tommy, meaning eugenics is the scientifically erroneous and immoral theory of racial improvement and planned breeding, which gained popularity during the early 20th century. Eugenicists worldwide believed that they could perfect human beings and eliminate so-called social ills through genetics and heredity. And it says, what is another word for eugenics? Heredity, meaning genetics, genetic makeup, inheritance, constitution, that is descent, DESCENT, constitution as in composition, not as in the law, extraction, that is genes, GENES, a genesiology, genesiology, parentage. So these are all concepts that are floating, not as popularly kind of promoted by the popular media, tabloids, etc. But underlying all the media in the UK, these are the concepts and they constitute agenda. One or more of them constitute the agenda of purifying the population by getting rid of the ills and so on. That is, of course, the Nazis' ideology, and whatever has happened after the Nazis were officially said to have been defeated. They have not. And in the UK, there is a very, very strong footing that has been for the last 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, that and Muslim haters, in the context of our commentary, have enjoyed without any opposition. And as officially the Labour Party is supposed to be or supposed to have been the opposition in the framework of the so-called democracy, the Labour Party has been dead for that purpose. And with the appearance on the surface as leader of the Labour Party of Starmer, the Labour Party has been politically being murdered. So any opposition that comes to Shawcross will not be coming from the Labour Party as fronted by Starmer, nor indeed from any members of Parliament that Starmer fronts and quote leads in the House of Commons in the UK tomorrow, that is in a few minutes' time, that is the day starting a few minutes' time. The launch will be sometime into the day, that is say the start of the main headings and the news running orders, that is to say the items that are included in the items of the news broadcasts, radio and television. The running orders will have Shawcross himself and will have others backing him, endorsing him, promoting him, justifying him. And there will be nothing. There will be nothing from independent, objective Muslims, because there exists no forum for independent, objective Muslims in the UK. As I said before, and as the facts prove, the operation that is called the East London Mosque Committee, it's not the musallis or the people who go to the prayers in the building, in the premises called the East London Mosque, but the individuals, hidden, secretive individuals who constitute the so-called committee of the East London Mosque, in the name of the East London Mosque, it has to be emphasized. Never confuse this collection with the people who go there for the performance of the Salah, the prayers. This is one, and the other is, of course, the operation, very similar to, identical with, and very much a part of, in tandem with the Committee of East London Mosque, is the one that is run under the name of the London Muslim Centre. And straddling both of those, that is to say, holding key positions in both of those formats, is, of course, what used to be called the IFE, the Islamic Forum Europe. Now, because of the notoriety that has been associated with the so called Bethnal Green schoolgirls, including Shamima Begum and Sharmina Begum, and the connection with the East London mosque that Sharmina had, where Sharmina's connection with the premises, East London Mosque, the address of the East London Mosque, was cited for more than a year on the Wikipedia entry about Sharmina. And this was asserted that two women belonging to the so called Sisters Forum were instrumental in brainwashing her and radicalizing her and encouraging her and promoting her and sending her to Syria, where their plan, according to the published accounts that has been seriously kind of amended now by Wikipedia, the purpose for Sharmina going to Syria in late 2014 was to meet her deceased mother. How would she meet her deceased mother? By committing suicide and being killed, either committing suicide or being killed in combat as a part of this, her participation in the so-called Islamic Forum. Islamic State. Sorry. I repeat, it's not Islamic Forum, it's the Islamic State that I meant to say. So the Islamic State, she joined, but apparently, according to the latest report, as contained in the Saturday magazine last Saturday, not yesterday, this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, I think, or was it this Saturday? I can check which Saturday it was. The item published in the name of Josh Baker in the Times Saturday magazine about Shamima Begum. Shamina was going to meet her mom in heaven. That's the quickest way to meet her mom, because the loss of her mother deeply affected Shamina. And that is what they took advantage of. Now let's see what the broadcast that was touted to be on the BBC Two on 7th of February, which the time has gone now. It's just about 5 hours ago. Let's check what they are saying about Shamima's broadcast. Okay, so the Spectator website, which is the website that is anti-Muslim and racist and all the rest of it. So we'll go to the Spectator later. This is the 1 hour ago. The Sun website says, Shamima Begum story. Viewers slam BBC for giving Jihadi bride 1 hour 30 long program. 1 hour 30 long program and threatened to cancel whatever. So it probably they cancel the subscription and whatever. And the Independent website says the Shamima Begum story is a gripping insight into the ex-ISIS recruit. Now, that is a significant difference in the wording. From the Sun. And the earlier one, which is just posted a few seconds before one another, the Shamima Begum story review at the Times, yeah? It says a smirking performance stymies any sympathy. Smirking meaning that Shamima Begum was not seen on the broadcast. I haven't seen it. I'm just reading the reports on the media so far. A smirking performance stymies any sympathy, which means that she was not remorseful. And the iNews says, the iNews, that is the iNews online, the Shamima Begum story is the fairest trial she is going to get. Now, that is the fairest piece that is to be found on the, at least the headline about Shamima Begum so far on anywhere in the British media. And the Daily Express says BBC backlash as fans fume, waste of license fee over shameful Shamima Begum documentary. The Birmingham Live says what happened to Shamima Begum's friends. New BBC documentary rebuilds the story of girls' journey, girls joining ISIS. And then it says the Global Herald. It says GB News published this video item entitled Shamima Begum is a victim and belongs in the UK. And this is by Charlotte Littlewood and Bushra Sheikh. And Birmingham Live again, which was 3 hours ago, that was probably before they actually saw it. Shamima Begum, where she is now and what happened to her babies, as new BBC documentary airs. And there is one Indian outlet called the Shamima Begum Story Review. Vulnerable and unashamed, the runaway ISIL remains an enigma. And the Telegraph, Shamima Begum Story Review, Vulnerable and Insolent, the ISIL runaway remains an enigma, which is identical to the Bharat Express news, which means that the Bharat Express must be connected with some connection with the Daily Telegraph website in the UK. Is it Amit Roy? Let's see what the Bharat Express byline is. It may be Amit Roy, who is one of the official mental slaves. Well, it doesn't say the name. It says by the Bharat Express News, February the 8th. So that their date is, of course, few hours ahead of the UK time. So this is the beginning of their piece, Bharat Express. They say that she is a thoroughly silly girl, yet not stupid. This must be Amit Roy. The silly girl can only come from Amit Roy. Amit Roy is a Bengali, origin West Bengal, Hindu. And Amit Roy is a dedicated servant of the anti Muslim cause through the Daily Telegraph. Or the another West Bengali origin Hindu called Bose, Mihir Bose. Now, Mihir Bose is a criminal who claims completely misleadingly and without any real justification on the moral or ethical evidence that he is related to Netaji Subhash Bose. Even if biologically it can be constructed that he might be related to some kind of root with Netaji Subhash Bose, he could not be more different from Subhash Bose. And I'll say only that because that doesn't need elaboration. Subhash Bose has got his own profile everywhere, so I don't have to kind of justify him. I am a supporter of Subhash Bose, and I'm a supporter of the rebel poet Kabi Nazrul Islam, and I'm a supporter of the poet philosopher Muhammad Iqbal. And here is this Indian thing, the Bharat thing, is saying filmmaker Josh Baker asked question after question to Begum, who was instructed to direct all of answers directly into the camera. In all the years she has been interviewed, Begum's demeanor has remained the same, a mixture of impudence and vulnerability, with some of her statements containing a grain of truth and others making us doubt her words. She says she now feels shame and guilt, but it's impossible to estimate whether this is real. Baker interviewed others involved in her story. Among them was her husband. Well, he is not her husband, he is a rapist, you fucking cunts. A Dutch ISIL fighter who is clearly a nasty piece of work. I would have liked to hear from Begum's parents, but they didn't show up. Now, what does it mean? Show up? Were they not allowed or were they not invited? So these are the beginnings, if you like, of the reaction to this piece that has been broadcast at 1900 hours GMT, and it will be accessible by the BBC iPlayer. So we'll be taking a wider, deeper look at the reactions, and we shall continue the updates. Now, back to the William Shawcross assault that is due today. I mean, this is now 7 minutes into Wednesday, the 8th of February 2023. When Shawcross actually appears in the mainstream after the so-called embargo is finished, he will be commented on and he will be taking part, of course, because Shawcross has been given unlimited access to the platforms in the media in the United Kingdom for decades. And my exchanges with Shawcross, the races, took place, I think, in the late 1980s. I cannot check the dates right now because the files are not handy, but my challenge to Shawcross took place at the London Institute of Contemporary Arts, which is situated geographically not far from the Buckingham Palace. But it's nothing to do with the Buckingham Palace as such, not part of the royalty, but it's a platform where likes of Shawcross, Hanif Qureshi, and the late Pakistani criminal called Altaf Gauhar were given platforms. And I confronted all of them with challenges about their authenticity and checking their veracity. Now, the two of them, like Shawcross and Altaf Gauhar, reacted with verbal antagonism to me, whereas Hanif Qureshi's response was to pretend to be a victim of my attacks on him. Well, Hanif Qureshi is not my victim, never was, never could be. But he pretended that in order to get the sympathy of the other people present in the audience. And the other thing I noticed about Hanif Qureshi was that he probably personally was less vicious than either of those two. I have to say that, despite the fact that he remains a promoter of Saitan Rushdie and an antagonist, an enemy of the objective human rights of the Muslims. So when the Shawcross thing hits the news stands, let's say later today, because this is only 10 minutes into into the date. There will be no really noticeable reply, response, commentary, criticism from anyone in the East London Mosque bureaucracy or in what used to be called the Islamic Forum Europe or their associates and cabals. And their counterparts in Birmingham, based in Birmingham and other parts of the UK. Why Birmingham? Because all these operations are sited in places where demographically Muslims are significantly a part of the local population, which means that universally the UK state and UK apparatus don't recognize Muslims as part of the ordinary population. So, therefore, there is no significant location where Muslims are not significantly a part of the local demography, where any kind of objectively independent Islamic standpoint is being possible to be advocated. The role that the East London Mosque bureaucrats, the operators that are part of the agency set up by Tony Blair and Gordon Brown to operate the Gordon Brown and Tony Blair version of the Muslim representation in Britain, which is what the East London Mosque is also a part of. These people, before the East London Mosque was set up in the 70s, the East London Mosque was not set up in the 70s. The East London Mosque, as it is now, only came into operation during the 80s, 1980s. The previous location was in the Commercial Road, not far from the building called the Troxy. But that was not identifiable, recognizable as a Muslim kind of architecture, which is what the East London Mosque has got, kind of semblance of Muslim architecture. So in the 70s, before the East London Mosque operation came into full swing, by literally beating up local Muslims. A number of local Muslims were beaten up by the gang and the thugs that were part of the gang that still occupies the East London Mosque kind of bureaucracy. And the beating up took place as a result of the confrontation that took place was originated from the kind of rivalry between a man called Chaudhry Moinuddin and a man called Maulana Abu Saeed. Now, Chaudhry Moinuddin biologically is from Noakhali in Bangladesh, but he claims to be from a background in Kolkata in India, which is intended to raise him or his image as being superior to the people of Noakhali, let's say. Moinuddin is a easily accessible name in the entry in the Wikipedia and others, so I don't have to detail into his biography, but the confrontation between him and the man called Maulana Abu Saeed was about the role that Abu Saeed was made to play as a fluent and good speaker of Arabic language in getting the money from the Saudis, which was necessary for the expensive premises that the East London Mosque complex is. So when Abu Said's use as a speaker of Arabic, which Moinuddin cannot speak Arabic even to 5% of the capacity that Abu Said has. And Abu Said, who went to the madrasa, that is Islamic schools in Silot, is a recognized scholar of Arabic. Unfortunately, Abu Said actually kind of ruined his reputation by being greedy. So the loot, the huge sums of money that the Saudis provided, apparently, there is no account of how much financial aid the Saudi regime gave to the ones that control the Eastern Mosque, especially Moinuddin. But whatever the amount of money was available, Abu Said got greedy and he wanted to find a way, according to my exclusive source, of trying to raise his own funds, not from the Saudis, but from vulnerable would be migrants from Bangladesh. So he took, according to my source, I have no direct evidence. Abu Said took significant amounts of money in advance so that he would facilitate the migration of these people. So he was a trafficker. Abu Said became a trafficker, despite the fact that he is a recognized Arabic scholar. His character got tarnished by him being greedy. In any case, that was one of the kind of cited sources of Abu Said's ill-gotten income and behavior, which the Moinuddin faction used against him as one of the justifications for ousting Abu Said from the inner cabal that they had built up to that point. Abu Said then went to the Abu Said coming from Silot, and the UK Bangladeshis being the mainly Siloti speaking, Siloti background people, and UK Bangladesh is really an alternative to the Bangla language dominated cabals in Bangladesh. So Abu Said took advantage of that composition, the demography, and went for sympathy of the Silotis. This is my construction based on all the evidence that I have heard and seen and considered. So Abu Said said to the Silotis, look, this Bengali Moinuddin is ousting me from the Eastern Mosque. Now, this Bengali is a very significant kind of label because all the Bengalis, that is Moinuddin and others, are vulnerable to that particular characterization. So, what Moinuddin did was to recruit a gang of Siloti speaking thugs who then beat up the ordinary Siloti speakers who came to the East London Mosque as supporters of Abu Said. Get it? Those thugs are still about. And the East London Mosque, the cabal that is, not the ordinary musallis that come there to say their prayers, but the cabal there, in tandem with the what used to be called the Islamic Forum Europe, dominates the control and it suppresses the democratic voice of ordinary Muslims, either in Tower Hamlets or beyond Tower Hamlets. So, tomorrow, that is Wednesday, when the William Shawcross attack on Muslims gets the mainstream media reception, there won't be any dissent, significant dissent from the controlling operation called the Eastern Mosque or the former Islamic Forum Europe. Now, just for those who are new to this kind of references, let's check if we can find the contents of the transcript. I'm giving the source Andrew Gilligan, dispatches Britain's Islamic State. I'm saying it out loud so that the evidence I'm citing can be tested and checked. Britain's Islamic State was broadcast on Channel 4 Dispatches program on the 1st of March 2010. Now that program was broadcast on the Channel 4, and that remains this day, as far as I know, any mainstream media in Britain, that is the one. No other comparable length of documentary or depth of documentary about the East London Mosque and the Islamic Center Forum Europe has been broadcast or published. So that is as a reference. As a reference, that is the reason for referring to that. So it's not, what a stupid. I have entered Gilligan. The fucking Google keeps bringing in the fucking cunt. Andrew Neil? I don't want the fucking Andrew Neil. In the House of Commons, tabled on the 22nd of May 2006, why are they talking about 27th? That was not the one that refers to the one that I'm talking about. This is the one that now the response to Gilligan's dispatches program, as I'm looking at on the website of the thing called MCB, dated, is a press release, and it's called Muslim Council of Britain. And the main banner says MCB celebrating 25 years now. No Muslim, no Muslim who is truthful, ethical, moral would use the term or concept celebrating. It's not a thing to celebrate. It is at most something to mark 25 years. But they would not know what marking means because they are not in struggle. They are part of the status quo. And the contents of this press release, dated the 2nd of March 2010, that is the day after the actual airing of the Dispatches program fronted by Andrew Gilligan, reads Dispatches program cooks up an Islamic Republic of Britain to serve our already shrill anti Muslim discourse. Now, our is again not appropriate. Anyway, this is not something that they got right. He didn't say Islamic Republic of Britain. Gilligan's program was titled Britain's Islamic Republic. Very different phrases. Now, that is the Muslim Council of Britain, which is in that press release coming across as the expression, representation of the quote East London Mosque and the Islamic Forum Europe, something I already referred to. Now, let's see what Andrew Gilligan himself Andrew Gilligan's actual transcript is dated the 22nd of October 2010. And here is the introduction to that first item that I'm looking at, not necessarily the first item that appears. And it is dated the 22nd of October 2010. And it says about himself on that date, he was the senior correspondent for the Sunday Times. And then previously, he was at the Telegraph, the London Evening Standard, and the BBC's Today program. We'll come to the Today program because of the connection with Rod Liddell, who was the editor of the Today program when Gilligan was working on the Today program. And then he says, Gilligan, that is, I'm a winner or nominee of various awards, including the Paul Foot Award, the Orwell Prize, Amnesty International Media Awards, British Journalism Awards, and Foreign Correspondent of the Year, and Journalist of the Year at the British Press Awards, winner 2008, nominee 2015. Then he goes on in the next paragraph. I'm also head of the Capital City Foundation at Policy Exchange. Now, Policy Exchange is one of the right wing outfits that would very much kind of fulfill the definition of being a part of the consortium that has or would have ideologically as their head William Shawcross. Not that he is formally one, but he would be in terms of the aims and objects. And he says, Andrew Gilligan, former cycling commissioner for London. Now, cycling commissioner was a post given to him by the dogmas Boris Johnson when Johnson was in the post as mayor at the expense of London. Now, Gilligan says that this is his personal blog. And I'm going on to read about this because this transcript is very important. as evidence. Not that evidence that I'm citing is evidence that I agree with, because I have challenged Gilligan in front of people outside a church in Commercial Road. And I've called him a racist, and I've called him a liar on the record, on the film that was recorded by the team or group called the Channel S, and its so-called reporter called Zubair. Now, Channel S in my definition is slave. In any case, Channel S has been overly promoted as being the most widely watched satellite TV outlet watched by Bangladeshis. Well, it is watched more by the Silotis than by non-Silotis, let's say. And the Channel S, the channel slaves, played and are playing persistently corrupt, dishonest, untruthful role in shoring up the corrupt career of the corrupt Lutfur Rahman. So we'll come back to all of this in due course again for due updates. Going back to Andrew Gilligan and who says that this is his personal blog. So the final paragraph, which is important for me to read out on the record on this program, is the one that is most significant here, where he says this site includes archived posts published on my Telegraph blog between 2009 and 2014. And the paper, that is the Telegraph, has now closed all its blog sites. So links in the posts to Telegraph blogs, including my own, that is Andrew Gilligan's own blogs on the Telegraph portal, let's say, don't work. But you can find anything of mine by using the search box below, which is all right. So he has got archives, and we shall go to the archives that is referring to this channel for dispatches. This is the one that I'm going to focus on, March 2010. And his question or observation meets my approval totally. This is the headline, that is, not the contents, but let's see. Islamic fundamentalism is George Galloway's Respect Party the stupidest party in Britain. And I agree with that completely. Not only is George Galloway's Respect, at that date anyway, the stupidest party in Britain, but George Galloway was the most dishonest pretender. We'll talk about all of those. So let's see the beginning of this piece that appears under this heading, Islamic fundamentalism. Is George Galloway's Respect the stupidest party in Britain? Andrew Gilligan blog, March 24, 2010. Politics, and there is one comment. Let's read the first paragraph in that piece. A motion submitted for consideration at the meeting of Tower Hamlets Council later today, that is 24th of March, has unfortunately been somewhat overtaken by events. Two Respect councillors on that date, that is not now, Fazal Mia and Harun Mia. Harun Mia is a councillor, but in a different kind of description, let's say, have put down an angry Jeremiah, see page 11 of this PDF, attacking me, that is Andrew Gilligan, for the utterly unfair denigration of a hard-working senior council officer, Lutfur Ali, and calling on the council to express its complete confidence in him. Now, this Lutfur Ali is not the Lutfur Rahman and is not related to Lutfur Rahman biologically as far as we know. But this Lutfur Ali, and the date that Gilligan's item appeared, 24th of March 2010, which is just under 13 years ago. Yeah. Now, on that date, Lutfur Ali was, as the phrase goes, not that this phrase is used in the Andrew Gilligan transcript or the report. He was parachuted into the highest possible executive post as an employee of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council by Lutfur Rahman. And we'll go back to that again, but continuing the reading of Andrew Gilligan's piece. Alas, in between penning their sizzler and having it debated tonight, Mr. Ali, that is Lutfur Ali, the council's assistant chief executive, has resigned after it became clear that hardworking was indeed the right word for him. So hardworking was Mr. Lutfur Ali that he appears to have been doing two jobs, both at public expense, in direct breach of his contract. Mr. Lutfur Ali, whose responsibilities included council grants, had been appointed despite submitting a misleading CB and despite headhunters making clear that he was totally unsuited for the job. Assistant Chief Executive for Tower Hamlets Council, that is. But he did have one important qualification for high office at Tower Hamlets. He was closely linked to the fundamentalist Islamic Forum of Europe. Of course, the IFE must be cross that the council's fast flowing money tap to its various associated bodies might now be turned off. But no doubt it is pure chance that the two councillors who defended Mr. Ali are members of a party, Respect, whose council group leader, Councillor Abjol Mia, is a senior activist in the IFE and whose sole parliamentary representative, George Galloway, owes, in his own words, more than I can say to the fundamentalists. That's where the stupidity of the Respect Party comes in. Given this record, if I was Respect, I think I would want, with an election coming up and all, to put some distance between myself, Islamic sectarians, and the dodgy ex-council officer crony, but no, with a recklessness that is almost refreshing, with a recklessness that is almost refreshing. The Respect Party of George Galloway, that is, have embraced the hopeless Lutfur Ali as one of their own. Mr. Ali, storms the Respect leaflet, has been put under terrible pressure because he is a Muslim of Bangladeshi origin and for no other reason. What? No other reason at all, George. Not the false CB, the IFE links, the moonlighting. Only in Tower Hamlets could someone actually seek to make capital out of defending a person like Lutfur Ali. This is Andrew Gilligan. I'm still reading Andrew Gilligan, not me. The attempt to claim him as a victim of Islamophobia, now that is a stupid word as well, essentially amounts to a demand that no Muslim may ever be criticized for anything, ever. The idea that defending one's racial and faith identity must involve standing up for misconduct is not one of the most Muslim one that most Muslims will recognize. I'll read that sentence again and I'll say I agree. The idea that defending one's racial and faith identity must involve standing up for misconduct is not one that most Muslims will recognize. Of course, Islam is the party against misconduct and corruption. So, of course not. Then Gilligan goes into the next paragraph, which reads: luckily, even in Planet Tower Hamlets, I, that is Gilligan, gets the feeling that not many people are buying, and in one sense, the leaflet does us all a favor. Its sheer stupidity further discredits any cynical playing of the race and faith card, and it makes nakedly explicit what we have only suspected until now, that Mr. Galloway's Respect Party is nothing more than a sectarian creation based on the crudest involvement of race and faith. Well, I think that Gilligan, whom I called an idiot in overall context, is ignorant about Galloway. Because Galloway's respect was not, and I repeat this, I cannot repeat it too many times because this is true, is not a sectarian creation based on the crudest invocations, not involvement. I misread that word before. The crudest invocations of race and faith. Now, I stood outside the Genesis cinema in the Mile End Road. I didn't go in. I stood outside the Genesis cinema in the Mile End Road about 20 years ago when George Galloway was being inaugurated by the socialist wonkers, SWP, and other racist socialist wonkers as the hope for humanity at the expense of the people of Tower Hamlets and particularly the parliamentary constituency of Bethnal Green and Bow. And I knew, because I was standing outside, for a purpose and with a clear moral objective, which is to assess who the people inside were and who was leading the actual launch of this corrupt George Galloway, coming all the way after being kicked out of the parliamentary platforms in Scotland. It was socialist wonkers of all kinds of varieties, not Muslims, most certainly not Bangladeshi, not Silotis, okay? So you can get lost, you fucking George Andrew Gilligan. You can get fucking lost, you got it wrong. That, despite the fact that it was the wonkers, racist wonkers that launched him, Galloway managed to get a foothold among the Muslims in the constituency of Bethnal Green Bow at the 2005 general election. Shows the stupidity, the idiocy of all these people that operate all these outfits. We shall come to other extensions and discussions in due course of this. Now, and as I said, this is a source of factual references to Andrew Gilligan and his dispatches program. It's not, as I have just condemned him, it's not in any way a kind of endorsement of Gilligan. Now, what is he doing with the Archer thing? Let's see. He says here in this piece that appears immediately under that first one that condemns respect, and he says, pawn of Islamism, one Tory has a big decision to make. This one is the 19th of March 2010. In describing the Islamic Forum of Europe's infiltration into British politics, I have concentrated so far on Labour and respect because it's those parties who have the most immediate problem. But the IFE's cleverness and its cynicism is that it is working on the Tories too. Then the next paragraph says Peter Golds, the Tory leader on Tahamder's council, bravely stood up with the Muslim moderates and against the IFE fundamentalism in my Channel 4 documentary. But his colleague Tim Archer, the Tory parliamentary candidate for Poplar and Limehouse, is rather different. That is Andrew Gilligan, has known at that date, that is 19th of March 2010, he had known at that date for a while that Tim Archer has quite close and interesting relationship with the IFE's headquarters, the East London Mosque. I have been prepared until now to put this down to the usual naivety of the white political establishment. Maybe I thought, like so many others, Mr. Archer believed the mosque's spin about its commitment to community cohesion and tolerance. Maybe he didn't realize the major inconsistency between what they say to the likes of him and the hate and extremist speakers they regularly host. But Mr. Archer must now know what has gone on at this mosque. As an active politician in Tower Hamlets, he must be aware of the stories that the Telegraph, Channel 4, and this blog have run over the last few weeks. That is talking in March 2010. So I can draw only one conclusion from his decision to appear at an IFE event on the 30th of March at the East London Mosque, whose purpose is to attack media smearing of Muslim organizations, within brackets, code no doubt, for our investigations. That conclusion is as follows. Mr. Archer is perfectly willing to allow himself to be used as a pawn by Islamists if he thinks there might be a few votes in it. Mr. Archer will be appearing alongside a number of other speakers who have, shall we say, a famously friendly relationship with Islamism. Bob Lambert, the former head of the Metropolitan Police's Muslim Contact Unit, Oliver McTiernan, director of Forward Thinking, and that celebrated figure George Galloway, who owes the IFE, in his own words, more than I can say, more than it would be wise for me to say. Nobody, interestingly, from the Labour Party. But there will be Muhammad Habibur Rahman, recent former president of the IFE. Mr. Archer's opponent in Poplar is another brave witness against East London Islamists, Jim Fitzpatrick, also invited to the event, but I fear unlikely to attend. Perhaps the IFE is whispering in Mr. Archer's ear that if he stands with them, They will stand with him to oust the evil Fitzpatrick. But there are some things that democratic politicians simply should not do to win votes. Among those things, I would suggest is legitimizing a group opposed to everything your party is supposed to believe. Well, I'm not going into the detailed diagnosis of that particular claim because, in context, that will distort the current narrative in this piece. Just to remind Mr. Archer, that is Tim Archer, not Jeffrey Archer, one more time about his house. The IFE states within quotes, our goal is not simply to invite people and give dawah, call to the faith, that is Islamic faith. Our goal is to create the true believer, to then mobilize those believers into an organized force for change who will carry out dawah, hisbah, enforcement of Islamic law, and jihad, struggle. This will lead to social change and Ikamatuddin, Islamic social, economic, and political order. Now, Ikamatuddin is not order, really. It would be the establishment, I think, would be the closer, nearer contextual meaning. The IFE tells us that it is dedicated to changing the very infrastructure of society, its institutions, its culture, its political order, and its creed, from ignorance to Islam. It strives for the establishment of a global, that is, Andrew Gilligan says, his italics, society, the Khilafah, compared, comprised of individuals who live by the principles of Sharia. The IFE's primary work to create the state, the document goes on, is in Europe. Again, it is Andrew Gilligan's italics, because it is this continent, despite all the furore about its achievements, which is a moral and spiritual vacuum. Though they have spent the last 3 weeks doing a great deal of huffing and puffing about our media smears, that is, the dispatches program, the IFE has been totally unable to deny that these are its words. And just to remind Mr. Archer, Tim Archer, that is, about some of the people to whom the IFE has previously given a platform, these are the people that he names. Garait Bahir, spokesman for the Afghan warlord Gulbuddin Hikmatia, whose forces have fought alongside the Taliban against British troops. Bilal Phillips, an unindicted co-conspirator in the World Trade Center bombing, and Awlaki, Anwar al-Awlaki, spiritual guide to two of the 9/11 hijackers, the Fort Hood murder, and the attempted Detroit plane bomber. This is all from Andrew Gilligan's piece, not me. I'm just reading for a contextual reference to the narrative. I have just a slight feeling that Mr. If Tim Archer does join the illustrious company, it could do him more harm than good. There are more opponents of Islamism in Poplar and Limehouse there are, than there are supporters of it. If he gets on that platform, it is certain to be brought up during the Poplar campaign, in which I shall be taking a close interest. And how ironic it would be, even if Tim Archer were elected, that he achieved that distinction at the next as the next George Galloway, the next figure who owes more than he can say to the IFE. Okay, so this is the next one is dated the 17th of March. I'm going backwards date wise, and it's headed breaking news. fundamentalist linked council official resigns. Lutfur Ali, one of the key figures in the fundamentalist Islamic Forum of Europe, East London Mosque's influence over Tower Hamlets Council, has tonight resigned. The council confirmed. Mr. Ali was the second most powerful officer on the council, and his departure is a major blow to the fundamentalists. The IFE's opponents are overjoyed. This is the tipping point, says Badrul Islam, one of the main local opponents of the group. Now, where on earth is Badrul Islam? Andrew Gilligan is over exaggerating Badrul Islam's status. Badrul Islam is not a local opponent of the group at all. Badrul Islam has not been original in anything, and he is traceless now. We shall come back to talking about Badrul Islam and others when we do a longer review of the Dispatches program as broadcast on Channel 4 on the 1st of March 2010. Not in this edition, but later in future editions. Going back to this piece about Lutfur Ali resigning, Mr. Ali, a close associate of the IFE, was appointed Assistant Chief Executive of the Council on £125,000 a year, despite a negative headhunter report and a misleading CB. He featured heavily in my Channel 4 Dispatches documentary on fundamentalist infiltration into London politics. As we reported, that is Gilligan, Mr. Lutfur Ali has been accused of moonlighting for other employers who only realized when they saw him in our documentary. Questions will be raised about whether the council was right to allow him to resign. Shouldn't he have been sacked? And he is getting a payoff or any other benefits. More to follow on this story later. A full statement from the council is expected within the hour. And I may also post on a completely ridiculous statement issued today by those celebrated champions of moderation and tolerance, the East London Mosque. Watch this space. Lutfur Ali is featured in the previous item, which is dated the 15th of March 2010, and so forth. Now, as I said, Andrew Gilligan is the only one that can be quoted and cited extensively about these elements. And the other one, of course, going back to that time, is Ted Jury, whose blog began to contain significant contents. Like with Andrew Gilligan's pieces, I don't agree with Ted Jury's reasoning or conclusions, because I think that Ted Jury is racist, and in essential details, he is an ignorant racist because he doesn't know about the history of the Bara, because he is not from Tower Hamlets, and his familiarity with Tower Hamlets and Bangladeshis is based on a series of artificial sources who themselves are corrupt, dishonest, and are not from Tower Hamlets. And it goes on. Now, Andrew Gilligan is even worse in terms of local connections with Tower Hamlets. So we shall be updating on all of those. Now, I can say that because I have been defending the community in Tower Hamlets physically for 50 years. And that defense has been round the clock 24 hours, every day, except when I've been absent from the location due to various campaigning commitments. But that has been short term absence. And as I said, the Andrew Gilligan is the second one after Ted Jury, or along with Ted Jury, as sources that can be tested and checked. But whatever the source is, tomorrow, that is later during today, Wednesday, the 8th of February, 2023, when the massive attack around the publication of the Prevent report on the Prevent strategy fronted by the racist eugenicists, neo-Nazi, anti-Muslim hater, and hater of the Palestinian people, William Shawcross becomes the reference point. There will be nobody from the IFE or the whatever it is called now, or the crooks that control the operations in the name of the East London Mosque, or from any of the other parts of the United Kingdom where due to demographic composition of the relevant locality, there are some Muslim outfits operating, say, for example, in the center of Birmingham, in Manchester, and other places. We shall be considering all of those, and also we shall be talking about Shamima Begum, not in this edition because the broadcast has gone out, and there will be print newspaper coverage on the broadcast. We should be 95% hostile. We shall take account of those in the next appropriate edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel. Now, where is the Baby Angel Geronimo edition's moral kind of independence? It is in all of these. Because the Baby Angel Geronimo is the only witness that has been witnessing the evilness in every agency, in every action, every decision made in the name of the United Kingdom state, name of the collective population of the United Kingdom, and name, as Shawcross says, in the name of Western democracy. Baby Angel Geronimo has witnessed the lies of and by William Shawcross and his colluders, co-conspirators. Now, shifting the physical focus from Tower Hamlets for a minute, if we look at the behavior of the central government, conservative central government, issued they have issued kind of executive kind of directions allowing local councils like Croydon in southwest London, the council to raise taxes, council taxes, which is not to be raised from rich people like the Tory donors and the robbers who have been given billions of pounds under the pretext of the COVID contracts by Rishi Sunak. But ordinary people in Croydon Borough will be penalized. And the main excuse will be to pay for the council services in Croydon. If you take the narrative back a few years, Croydon Council was allowed by the police, by the judiciary, by the government, which has been conservative throughout that corruption. Croydon Council was led by the Labour Party. And the Labour Party was led by a bunch of crooks, real criminals. Look up the word criminals, and you will find the definition I'm using, I'm intending to use, I'm meaning. And the reason why the Conservative government didn't prosecute and take action against the criminals, the Labour Party criminals in Croydon, was not because they didn't know, because corruption by local councils across England is part of the game. And if the conservative government, like Michael Gove, who is the current incumbent over before the shuffle, I mean reshuffle, I'll go and check if he's still there in that place. They're all aware of not just accidental corruption that goes on by and through and inside local councils such as Croydon, but they are aware of the routine, day to day, 24/7 corruption that goes on in every English local borough council. And this is part of the explanation as to why the Conservatives, who have been in power since May 2010, didn't prosecute Luthuroman. Why? Because if they prosecute Luthuroman, which in criminal law he can be prosecuted any time on the evidence, not because they want to, but on the evidence, if the crimes committed by Luthuroman and his co-criminals are prosecuted, then evidence of corruption and crimes committed by conservatives in local councils will eventually emerge, and that will warrant similar actions or warrant demands for similar actions to be taken against the crooked conservative councillors and council post holders and council mayors. That is one very practical reason. The other is that including the likes of Andrew Gilligan, including the likes of the so-called Guardian, there is no platform anywhere in the UK, which is the part of the theme of the Baby Angel Geronimo narratives. It's the platform that is watching the moral vacuum is the Baby Angel Geronimo platform. And we update on the contents every single edition. So there is no parliamentary forum, there is no forum in government, there is no forum in the constitutionally constituted judicial bureaucracy that actually takes account or takes account the crooks controlling the councils. And the discovery of the role of the Labour Party when Jeremy Corbyn was imposed as leader, as I have said, on the evidence, not because I want to call him a liar, but Corbyn is a person of very limited intelligence. And morally, he is quite shifty. He was complicit with Croydon Council's corruption, as Corbyn has been complicit with the corruption by other Labour controlled or Labour fronted council. So, where do people go? Where do people who want to oppose corruption by councils go to? They cannot go anywhere except to rely on their own experience and their own evidence and their own location to carry out independent demands. That's where they must begin. And we shall end this edition at 1 hour and 30 minutes by saying that the next item will be about, next edition will have considerable content devoted to the corruption, the criminality, the illegality, the dishonesty, and the cruelty by the collection called the London Borough of Newham Council, as fronted by the current incumbent in the corrupt post of elected mayor, Roxana Fiaz. We're ending this at 1.5 hour at 01:10 hours GMT into Wednesday,